Hello, everyone. I hope you are having a very productive and sunny week around the world. My name is Hugo Pereira, currently Fractional Chief Marketing Officer at Frends, tuning in from Amsterdam. There's 30 degrees outside. I think it's the same for many of you across Europe and beyond. Also, fun fact, my youngest daughter has chickenpox at home, but that does not stop me from welcoming you all to today's edition of Frends Spotlight, our newest digital gathering where we want to showcase the latest capabilities of the Frends platform. So today on the agenda, as you've signed up to it, we'll be talking about our recent release of our Enterprise MCP capabilities, our Model Context Protocol newest release, and some updates to our AI connector. So before we get started, a few house rules. As you can see on this new webinar platform, on the right side of the navigation, you have a chat function, a chat icon. You feel free to use that chat function and introduce yourself, say where you're coming from, how does it feel to handle the heat. And I hope that you can hear from us today all you wish for, and also use it throughout the presentation. Me and Asmo, who's going to be joining in just shortly, we're going to go and talk with each other about the newest features, show a live demo, and feel free to ask questions at any point in time. At the end of the live demo, we're going to enter on a Q&A conversation, and we'll address them at the end of it. So, moving forward, it is my pleasure to welcome also on stage Frends Chief Technology Officer, Asmo. Asmo, welcome. Happy to have you here.
Perfect.
And excited for what we are releasing today.
Likewise, and I have to mention, Hugo, it's everyone is holding up the heat, and I think this was the first day of the summer I had to turn on the AC, at least here in Finland. So
yeah, it is the same case. But if you have to turn on in Finland, it means that it's really hot for you to consider as such. But hey, to get started, because I know that people are excited to see the capabilities, but also to provide the context to why does this matter. We recently had our State of Integration and AI report, and for the people that haven't read it, it is available on the Frends website. But one of the remarks that was there was that 36% of organizations mention business orchestration and integration challenges as a blocker to move AI initiatives into production. So in your experience, what does it mean in practice for a typical enterprise?
Yeah, that's an excellent question and a really good throwback to the report, since it is a very interesting number. And I think from a practical perspective, most organizations are seeing that there can be benefits in AI, and they might have had some demos, maybe some pilots, and they can kind of see the light at the end of the tunnel that we could, for example, let's say, improve our productivity and our processes, our level of automation with AI. But the main blocker almost always, at least in our experience and according to the data that the report shows, is actually integration, and integration more specifically with AI and existing systems and business processes that almost all of our clients and customers have. So the problematic area, so to put it, is not going to be the new off-the-shelf systems and AI native solutions that are slowly but surely now appearing on the market. But for example, the ERP system from 10 years ago or 20 years ago, the custom in-house built CRM system or order management system, and how do you get those very critical parts of the existing enterprise and business to now talk with basically any AI solution, even if it in its most simplest form is proving to be a difficult challenge for many organizations.
No, completely reckon and understand that kind of situation. And going into the topic of today, and the topic that is probably on the board meetings of many of the enterprises that are watching here today, we hear a lot of talk about MCP, AI gateways. Can you guide us through the decision of building this first iteration of the Frends Enterprise MCP amongst a bigger suite that is coming? But what makes this approach different from what's out there? What does it enable that you believe that will add value to the customers watching this?
A really, really good question again. And I think we have to kind of start from the beginning here. And I think maybe might be good for our audience to open up just briefly what the MCP kind of stands for and what is its general purpose overall before maybe moving into how we implement that on the Frends platform. But a good way to think about the MCP protocol in general is kind of this USB connector for AI, which basically standardizes the way AI can interact with any existing system, data, or business processes. And obviously that, if you, let's say, look at it from another perspective, is a pure integration challenge. That's a pure integration problem to solve. And of course, the reasoning that led us to now implement our Frends Enterprise MCP, let's say version 1 or the first iteration, was the thinking that we saw this issue where customers, especially, for example, non-technical personnel at our customers, would like to use their Claude or ChatGPT or any other AI tool to, for example, directly interact with their business systems, talk to their data, perhaps automate some processes, and perhaps even start building more agentic solutions later down the line. But that, let's say, integration challenge was proving to be basically a major blocker for all of those initiatives. And the MCP protocol is really here to help us with that. And the thing that makes Frends unique in this, of course, realm is that as an integration platform, really specializing also in business critical solutions, high compliance environments, we can really bring a unique, let's say, angle and a unique approach that allows us to take those even, let's say, kind of perhaps previously thought of dangerous aspects of the business processes and systems to be accessible by AI, by really having basically the best in class capabilities for transparency and monitoring, understand and see what's going on when AI would be using those systems on our behalf, but also allowing us to implement guardrails and the practical connectivity in an understandable, easy to manage way via, of course, our existing process-based low-code methodology.
Okay, and as we get to showcase the live demo that people are hoping for and want to see, just to zoom in a little bit on the challenge that you have seen. I know that we put a little bit together some version of what are the main challenges that we hope to solve and the challenges you see in the conversations you have with various CIOs, CTOs, and head of enterprise architect. Can you guide us through the main 3 points that you see it across the board? You already mentioned a few of them, but maybe just a high-level view on the 3 things that we see the most happening.
Yeah, definitely, and I think it's really summarized quite well here on the slide, and of course I think I reiterated this already from the perspective that the, let's say, legacy systems or existing systems and business processes are basically not compatible with the way AI would like to work with those systems. Then that basically results in the fact that we need to now implement some form of connectivity layer. And of course, the main ideology and, let's say, value generator from our perspective, and of course what our customers really value, is that you could, of course, go and create this AI compatible layer on top of any existing legacy solution by basically just coding and developing it. But I think from that perspective, it's exactly the same, let's say, thinking and ideology as is around centralized integration platforms or iPaaS solutions in general, because oftentimes building it from scratch, building it from custom code just doesn't scale, or it just simply costs too much. So having a platform to enable that is really, I think, an essential part of the architecture. And perhaps a good thing to maybe mention here also is that if you want to go towards these sorts of agentic AI solutions or enabling your organization to be AI ready and AI native, quite often the option of, let's say, rebuilding solutions or rebuilding the systems from the ground up, that's never going to be a viable option for many different reasons.
Or a very costly one.
Or a very costly one, exactly.
Yeah. And that's why today we have the Frends Enterprise MCP, and the overall aspect that we see is ability to, as you mentioned, to validate, to govern, to call back and interact with the systems. We are eager to show some of those examples. We for the audience, we picked financial processes as an example there because it's transversal to any industry, to any organization. So I would say that, yeah, let's get started with sharing a little bit of the two use cases that we have prepared, and I let you take on the screen to share with the audience. And for the audience, yeah, if you have questions as Asmo presents, yeah, please use the chat as the questions we'll address at the end of the live demo. So Asmo, I let you share the screen and share a little bit of the experience that you want to bring to the people. So I will.
Excellent.
Now let it show.
So just making sure that we should be sharing a familiar screen here from Frends. And basically what we are now enabling with the Frends Enterprise MCP at this stage is a new capability, like I mentioned previously, in Frends to create what we would be calling tools. And tools are now, let's say, the arms and legs of the AI that you choose to have access to this particular toolkit. So the tools are basically standard integrations built on top of the Frends platform, but they are actually exposed out towards any compatible AI using the MCP protocol like we covered here earlier. So the demo use case we have now prepared here for you today is from two different perspectives. So we have two acts in essence for our demo, where the first act is basically a use case where we have an imaginary finance system that's almost 20 years old now, but we would still like to start automating our finance processes around that, and more specifically, basically invoice and purchase order approval. So the first thing that we need to do when starting to automate and taking AI into the equation when automating, for example, these types of financial processes, is to think, what are the typical actions that a human would do against that existing system? How does the overall business process basically work to make an, let's say, existing purchase order and existing invoice approved? And the result of that brainstorming or thinking is quite typically a list of tools similar as I guess we can see here. So what I've actually now implemented in our demo environment here are 4 dedicated tools, where we have a tool for retrieving any pending invoices that have not yet been either approved or sent for, let's say, further approval or investigation. We, of course, need to get specific details of the vendor where we are getting that invoice. And finally, of course, getting the exact details of the invoice itself. And finally, there is, of course, now the choice for the AI or for the human to approve or hold the invoice in the financial system. So in essence, what are we now doing in Frends is we are building a business toolkit, now specifically tailored around this purchase order approval process. And because we've now implemented those as these MCP tools here on the Frends platform, we of course have, or we can of course now utilize all of the existing Frends low-code functionality. So that would mean access to our existing task library or connector library. We can build in all kinds of decisions, loops, data mapping tables, pretty much anything that you're familiar with from the integration side of world. But instead of synchronizing data between 2 different systems, we are quite simply now creating this particular use case to be accessible by the AI in question. And of course, to put this into use, how all of this works is that, of course, now the 4 different tools I have available are now exposed from the Frends platform, from our Frends agent, exactly like any other regular integration would be. And this means that I can now securely actually connect, for example, my Claude or ChatGPT, or like mentioned previously, any MCP compatible AI client to that toolkit. And of course, we could check here and see that we have now access to the Frends toolkit, or the MCP toolkit now connected to my Frends. And this basically now transforms my Claude into a partner for my work or for my finance team, where they can simply ask the AI to do the work that they had previously done manually. So how that would typically look like might be something like where the finance team member could say that, do we have any open purchase orders to process? And because those tools we have now exposed on the Frends platform are documenting themselves and informing the AI, Claude in this case, that how they're supposed to be utilized and how does the overall process in approving invoices or purchase orders work, the AI is now automatically able to surmise that it actually now needs to consume the tool list pending invoices. So you remember the tool we just saw on the Frends platform, and actually now directly access the purchase order or invoicing data in our financial system, and is actually now able to produce a very nice report for us, showcasing what are the invoices that need approval. And it's actually now even able to perform a little bit of analysis for that same use case. So this is really here where the intelligence in AI comes into play, because the AI now has access to that data in real time in my system. It's, for example, able to say that that this particular invoice has been flagged as a suspected duplicate, and it's actually saying that the reason is that it's from the same vendor for the same amount. And for example, it's also able to now detect that another purchase invoice here does not match with its amount and quantity. So for example, it's now even trying to prompt you to go deeper and further. So the AI is now, for example, asking, do you want me to pull the full details of either of the flagged one invoices? And I could say that yes, let's dive into the PO not matched invoice. And again, now the AI is basically able to do exactly the same thing it did previously, but now instead of grabbing all of the invoices needing approval, it's now retrieving a specific invoice and all the information relating to that particular invoice. And whilst the AI is, of course, now retrieving that information, this is a very good time to now also mention that we, of course, can now include different kinds of human in the loop and approval gateways. So, for example, I could now approve the AI to get the vendor master record data from our financial system. I could even say that I only want to allow that to happen once, and the AI now needs to ask me for permission anytime it would like to access the master record list. And of course, now using the information from our previous and first iteration combined with the specifics of that particular purchase invoice, it's actually now able to tell me what the issue is. And the long and short of it is, of course, in this case, is that there is a gap of 2,400 euros in the authorized PO and the invoice. And that means that the reason for that is that there's 20 extra boxes that we actually invoiced as opposed to what was ordered. And typically, of course, now probably the last thing to do as let's say a financial controller might be something like, let's put our, let's say, two suspicious invoices onto hold and approve the rest. And again, we can just continue with the same discussion, now using the final fourth tool that we of course now exposed to our AI to actually now make the hold and approval use cases. And of course, again, you can see that the AI is asking for permission to actually execute that. And of course, now the 2 flagged invoices are going to be put on hold, and the 4 clean invoices are going to be fully approved. So this was now, let's say, the view that as an end user, you might expect when transforming your existing custom legacy systems or business processes into something that are AI native, and the intelligence that AI can bring to basically your day-to-day work help speed things up by quite a bit. But of course, from the governance point of view, the really good thing about the Frends Enterprise MCP approach is that now all of those actions that you saw happening on the AI can actually directly now be mapped into Frends process instance executions. So I can actually track exactly what's going on. So even from the very first execution that happened on 15/16 by my Claude instance here, I can actually dive into that execution, exactly see what has happened, and more specifically, see the raw data, for example, in this case, that we are retrieving from the financial system using our standard integration connectors. We are filtering away invoices that are not in a pending state, and finally returning those that are pending. And of course, we can even take this further and, let's say, follow the entire trail of that entire conversation with the AI through each and every one of the tool executions. And that gives us very nice transparency and trackability in case, for example, the AI does something wrong. And this is also now the same place where we can, of course, implement guardrails to control who gets to do what with what system. Do we, for example, perhaps mask some data? Do we, let's say, tokenize some data in certain use cases? And we can even have, let's say, different types of registrations for the AIs here, basically determining whose AIs get access to where. And for example, does the AI have access for forever, for 3 months, 6 months? Typical authorization and authentication functionality you are already used to working with in the API management side of the picture. So this is a very nice example of how we can get an AI to talk to your systems, talk to your data, actually perform actions on your behalf against those systems. But the next step here is, of course, now to try and take everything that we did here together with the AI manually and make that fully automatic. And for that particular reason, we of course now have another agent integration process here running in exactly the same Frends catalog as our toolkit. And the only difference here is that for our agent, we can now basically take exactly the same prompt that we ran previously now against our Claude, but actually provide that prompt for the Frends AI connector. We can, of course, pick and choose which AI model we would like to use for this use case. We might want to use, for example, exactly the same model as we used in Claude. And in order to now make this AI agent capable of running this entire discussion that you see happening here from an end-to-end perspective, fully automatic, we only need to go into the Tools tab and basically allow the AI now to have access to exactly the same set of these 4 different tools. Then these are, of course, exactly the same tools that you just saw me using on the Claude user interface. But now we're simply providing access and providing those tools to be run automatically inside of a Frends process in the intelligent AI connector. And of course, lo and behold, now we can have a fully automatic AI agent basically performing exactly the same steps as I did here, fully manually. And that AI agent is able to consume those same tools. So we can see that it actually did 13 tool calls. We can, of course, see what were the different tools the AI actually used. We can, of course, dive into the particular steps here and see that in this case, for example, what was the vendor at a certain point in the execution. And the overall, for example, now response based on the prompt I provided is now a list where basically the AI has done a very similar determination that we needed to put a few of the purchase orders into hold, but we were able to automatically approve a few of the particular purchase orders and invoices. So the way that you can think about this is that we should really consider wrapping all of our systems, especially our legacy and custom systems, into AI-compatible tools, where we can then securely expose those tools for our employees, perhaps even business partners, where they can then use AI in this human-in-the-loop guided manner using their preferred AI client. And we can even take it one step further and automate the entire process. So have an internal AI within Frends using that exactly the same tool set to provide us with a full end-to-end automation and of course an autonomous AI solution running in production in our development environment. So that might be a very brief introduction and a sample demo on what the Frends Enterprise MCP is capable of doing for you, and something that we are very, very excited to start seeing our customers actually implement. Oh.
All right. Asmo, thank you so much. This is a really good overview. I was excited to see a few things. I also can see what I use on a daily basis on other processes. Before we get an answer, there is two questions that we have live, and perhaps also encourage the public and the audience to ask more questions as we gear into the conversation. What other use cases have you seen where this is a practical gain using the MCP capabilities and AI connector beyond financial processes? What have you seen other cases of other customers that are using?
That's a really good question, and I think imagination is the limit here pretty much. But I think the very first use case that I was excited about is that everyone probably is aware that sometimes at work we have to do annoying data entries to various different types of systems, be they sales pipeline or our reporting or any kind of, let's say, data input. And I think being able to basically transform the system into a Frends managed MCP tool and automate that data input via AI, that's like the biggest, let's say, time saver that puts a smile to my face when I don't spend time doing the manual copy pasting and clickety clicking. But of course, perhaps going a little bit further, I think the biggest benefits you can actually start seeing when you have multiple systems available for the same AI to dynamically be able to use. So for example, use our, let's say, financial system data in combination with our ERP data to perform, for example, some sort of analysis, predictions for me. And of course, I think this is prevalent throughout all functions pretty much across any organization, since I think all of our listeners can agree that for most of us at least, much of our time at work is spent working with a system or multiple systems, and pretty much all of those functions, all of those steps are something that can be, let's say, perhaps not fully automated, but they can be enhanced, and the productivity can be enhanced by quite a bit whilst introducing a safe AI into the equation.
All right, sounds good. Looking at the questions we have, we're going to get started with Remco, where he asks if you can add an MCP server trigger to existing processes without changing the old process.
An excellent question, and the short answer is yes, and no caveats. So it works in exactly the same way as any other trigger it does in Frends.
Okay.
You simply plop it in, connect it to your process, and you're good to go.
Okay. And the documentation is already readily available at docs.frends.com.
Yes, that should. Okay. Yeah, all the documentation is already readily available.
All right. Thank you, Remco, for the question. Next, I've seen a question coming from, I hope I'm pronouncing correctly, from Juho, or this might be a hard one like with the Nordic names, but Juho. If the MCP2 processes count towards the production process total count, or they are treated as sub-processes?
So they are treated as regular processes because it's kind of the same as having an API process that you're exposing to the outside world. It just works in a slightly different manner.
Okay, that sounds good. Then Antti has a question more on the authentication, which is how does the authentication flow work with the MCP? Can we build it so that it authenticates the user and then gets only the data that it should be visible to that user, or there are more possibilities around it?
That's an excellent question. So currently, we support the private application registration authentication capability in Frends, which means that we basically create a token for any AI identity or entity using those particular tools. And any information within that token, such as your user role, your groups, perhaps your sign-in time, your organizational unit, or any customized information, is fully accessible within the process and the tool, which means that we can quite easily now, for example, create a tool where if you belong to the administrator group, you have full access to the data, and for everyone else, perhaps we drop off certain fields and give you a, let's say, more restricted access to the same data set.
Okay, that sounds good. And then we have from Lucas about the Frends MCP support principal propagation in user identity pass-through. So that when it reads or writes data, it only accesses or modifies the data the user is allowed to read or write based on their permissions. A bit similar on the authentication angle.
A bit similar. So yeah, an excellent question again. So propagation/federation can be utilized if the backend system supports that, but typically a good best practice when implementing these tools is to build the tools in a very purposeful way, meaning that you basically either allow someone access to the tool or not, and then the granularity of the tool set defines which tools are you allowed to use and which you're not allowed to use, rather than perhaps hand that responsibility over to the backend system.
Okay. Thank you. One more from Alex about the process with the AI agent. What would happen or how would the workflow behave in case of human decision needed?
A really good, excellent question there as well. So if we were to do a fully AI or fully automated AI agent, like the one I showed you, we would utilize the long-running process capabilities and, for example, the checkpoint behavior that the Frends platform already offers, meaning that then basically we can have the AI come to the conclusion that it needs to have human approval or human input. We can now save the state of the integration at that point, wait until the human comes in and provides that feedback. And of course, the feedback could come in the form of a Teams message or even a record change in a system. But then that would, let's say, transform the agent to a stateful agent rather than a fully autonomous one. But a good question.
Yeah. Juho, great engagement, Juho, on asking the questions. How and where should the MCP2 process descriptions be written in order for the AI agents to understand how and when to use them?
Good question again. So the MCP tool descriptions are basically provided for the MCP trigger itself directly. So you can think of it in the same way that if you're creating an API in the Frends API management section, the trigger contains the information on how that API endpoint should be consumed. It's exactly the same for MCP tools. where you store that information in the trigger itself, so then it follows all of the normal version control and governance procedures that we already have on the platform.
All right, good. There is, please, if you have more questions, keep them coming. In the meantime, I see one question that is a good segue to something we also want to talk about, which is Frends thinking about building an MCP for Frends integrations to build integration from the MCP client, which is a good way to show perhaps something that is coming, because this is like a bigger narrative of MCP and AI capabilities you are bringing frequently over the next couple of months. So maybe this is a good segue to the Frends MCP, Asmo, that you can talk a little bit
definitely
about.
a very good segue. So the short answer is, of course, yes. So we are in the midst of building a full-blown MCP server capability for the Frends platform itself. And our, let's say, vision and goalpost here has been to allow you to use AI to do absolutely everything that's safe on the Frends platform via the use of AI and the Frends MCP server. So in essence, this means that you just saw me interacting with a financial system. You can imagine exactly the same, but instead of interacting with the financial system, I might be developing new integrations or debugging existing ones, perhaps monitoring failures and perhaps even deploying fixes and doing, for example, architectural or security analysis on the integrations I have. And just as a little bit of a sneak preview here, all of the demos you actually saw today were actually built by AI and not myself. So we are at the last stretches of development for the Frends MCP server. And I think we did an all right job, since it was able to whip up our demo we just saw within a few minutes just earlier today.
It's a good segue that, on September 15, we are showcasing more in-depth capabilities. So feel free to already, if you sign up for this webinar and are interested on seeing that, do register now for the next one. Don't miss it out. In the meantime, I see that we answer all the questions that we've had. We are also just arriving to the end of the webinar. Is there any final words in terms of how would a customer get started? Where should they get started? What would be your advice, and where can they find all the information around the newest capabilities?
Yeah, so definitely check out our website, our documentation. These features should be freely available in the Frends 6.3 version. But of course, all of our specialists here at Frends are fully at your disposal as well, if you would need any kind of help to get started or get familiar with the features, or even brainstorm how these could be utilized. So definitely don't hesitate to be in touch with us. We are doing this for several clients already and have a very good understanding of what works, what maybe does not work that well, and what maybe needs a little bit of thinking and planning to get working. But definitely, I think if you identify any processes with, for example, manual data entry, or you are already using AI, but you see yourself copy-pasting stuff from your system to your AI, these are the, let's say, lowest hanging fruits with just a few hours of work can actually bring a really big impact.
Okay, that sounds great. With that, Asmo, thank you for the presentation, the live demo. We are just reaching the end of the webinar right on time, so that we can be respectful of everyone's time. Also, if there are customers that are excited and interested and empowered by all the capabilities that you are bringing as Frends, we're always welcome and happy to give us a G2 review, and we have a small campaign of a reward with the QR code. I leave it here, but thank you, Asmo, again for the live demo, for the presentation, for the remaining of the customers. We are reaching the end of the webinar. You will receive a follow-up email with the recording and instructions and documentation that you can access it. And of course, if you are a customer of Frends, please reach out to your account manager or customer success manager if you want to understand more in depth the capabilities to your own use case, and we will be happy to help you as such. So,
perfect.
Thanks again, Asmo. It was a very good workshop, a very good showcase. Thanks, everyone. Have a pleasant rest of Tuesday and a great rest of the week.
Thank you, everyone.